No matter what app vertical you're in, acquiring high value users begins with an effective channel acquisition strategy. In practice, that means you fish where the fish are. You have to understand and pinpoint the channels that are compatible with your app's audience and goals, and then you move on. But that's where it also gets complicated or possibly exciting, depending on where you sit, because we have more channels and more opportunities to experiment, which can be daunting, but it's actually where non-gaming apps shine. They are expanding network partners to unlock scale and growth. And we're going to hear how, because today on The Groove, we talk with someone who is talking to those marketers, working with those marketers, and we deconstruct this strategy into steps you can take to succeed in UA, monetization, and much more. So we go to the source today. And my guest is Andrey Kazakov. He is VP of Demand at AppLovin's. That's a company that offers a full stack solution, including user acquisition, monetization, and measurement to help marketers grow their app. He also is leading the team responsible for non-gaming advertiser growth. And Andrey joined AppLovin when the company was acquired in 2021. He's had quite a track record there, multiple leadership positions and roles. He was a just COO, then president, currently serving as its chairman. So multiple hats here, but multiple insights as well. Welcome to The Groove, Andrey.
Thanks for having me, Peggy.
So it's work from home. I'm working from home, but you're not. Where are you today?
I'm in Barcelona today at Mobile World Congress,
Okay.
taking a break from meetings to have that conversation.
Appreciate that, because it is, I heard it's hopping. I heard it was really good this year. So I'm sort of possibly missing out on something. Mobile is what it is, and it is where the excitement is. We're going to talk about the opportunities for non-gaming mobile apps and marketers. But first, I just wanted to zoom in on something, because I was struck when I was looking at your LinkedIn profile and elsewhere about your skill set in investment, VC, venture capital. Where are we now? Because I'm hearing marketers talk about it's a deal winter, right? They're bracing themselves for demanding and challenging times ahead. What do you see when you put your investor business savvy hat on?
Yeah, I had to start companies, and that included raising capital, so maybe that's where it's coming from. Seasoned investors understand there is an opportunity to get better terms, and also depends where like their capital is coming from, because there's certain discipline that they need to and expectations need to fill with their limited partners, and in certain cases those might prefer to take it slow this year because there's a lot of uncertainty. But also depends what kind of investor is, right? Because if it's somebody who is investing like his or her own money, that could be different. But I wouldn't say there's lack of capital, just more caution, and parties try to use it to their advantage. Definitely not the winter.
Good, good. What I hear is also do more with less, or be smarter about what you're doing. And you have to be smart about how you pursue growth opportunities, be smart about UA. What about non-gaming marketers? No matter the climate or conditions, they seem to be bucking the trend, right? I mean, games are still huge. Non-gaming apps topping app revenues for the first time ever in the US App Store, for example. Is this a surprise for you? Is this what you expected?
Yeah, well, I think it's a natural progression of just consumer business in general, right? Like every consumer business is mobile these days. And I think the store metric is just reflection of that trend. And yeah, we see people get more cautious and responsible with their budgets. They're more sensitive to pacing, goals, but whatever business that is, like you still need users and you need to remain competitive. So I would say that like rules of the game change a bit in a way that people are more cautious and looking to have their goals met more aggressively, but advertising is definitely there, and people are spending to get more users.
So the non-gaming growth, we agree, it's real, right? What are the misconceptions, maybe even the mistakes you see non-gaming marketers making across the board? Because they are following a playbook that was started a little bit by the gaming apps, but hey, they're not gaming apps.
When there's a new partner that is joining the portfolio of channels that consistently drive growth, every one of them have slightly different set of what takes to make it successful. And that includes learning budgets, expectation of when you're going to start yielding return, how we approach creative, like what data is shared, and all those factors play into how successful the partnership would be, and when is the right time to expect the return. But also there is tremendous incentive to increase the channel portfolio, right? Because the current channels that app developers are working with, that at certain stages they get to be optimized already. And if you want to get new growth, you would need to expand your channel portfolio and properly invest into those opportunities to make them successful. Getting multi-channel oftentimes is the only way to actually see growth within the goals, right? Because if the current portfolio is optimized and maxed out, you really got to go and get something new going properly.
And one thing you want, no matter if it's fintech, if it's e-commerce, wellness, you name it, you want to acquire valuable users from the get-go. Now, for each vertical, it's going to be a little different. You know, they have to look at different metrics, perhaps, look at different events. It's a different playbook for each vertical. Now, you work with all of these verticals. So let's try to do that. Let's try and build a little bit of a playbook for our audience. Let's take, for example, maybe fintech as an example.
With fintech, it's a good vertical that we see a lot of success and advertisers flowing through, even given the headwinds in economy. It's still out there and blooming. Uh, I would say this, like for whatever the advertiser is, it's really about being able to deliver consistent growth within their expectations and goals. If we can think about particular examples, there is the business called Bridget. Bridget is a one of the most innovative financial apps in 2022 by Fast Company's opinion, and it has tremendous reach in US. The idea of the product is to actually being able to provide financial options for users. And when we were working with Bridget, the goal was always to be a partner that could be consistent source of growth for them long term. While we were working together, we were able to get their CPEs down 60% and increase subscription rates twofold. But those numbers, like they do make sense in specific context, but the idea is really to be able to set the relationship and partnership up the way where we can work together long term, and AppLovin can power the growth consistently for a very long time. This is our goal with pretty much any client.
You're talking about it so much, Andre. I'm just thinking that it's so central here is to set expectations, realistic expectations, but also know your audience and your app. Help me understand how you work with companies to set those realistic expectations and ultimately to find those valuable users.
Yeah, well, first off, I think it just starts with understanding their business in general, right? What's their expectation to get a payback on paid user acquisition, how they think about lifetime value for their users, what are their goals locally in different geos, what's their current partner mix, and all those things considered, we work together to create a setup that's going to be long-term successful.
Any blueprint here from what you've done with Bridget, for example, that's applicable to other fintech companies?
I think being transparent and frank about what we want to achieve and how we're going to do it, and then follow what it takes to do so when it comes to what it's going to take to actually make the campaign learn, what's the creative strategy here, and what's going to be time that will be required to get that to the stage where it's performing. Those are the key things, no matter what the vertical is.
Yes, there is a level of understanding how to optimize the campaign. There's an element of what you need to be helping me as a marketer do. But what I, as a marketer, also need to be preparing and understanding. You're going to be as smart as I make you, basically. Can you tell me a little bit about that dynamic?
Yeah, in that sense, well, basically everything that we do is like machine learning powered in terms of optimization. And when the campaigns start, we just need to get critical amount of signal and events that we are optimizing towards. And when that process takes place, it the performance of the campaign is not the goal. The goal of campaign is just to get as much signal as it can for the period given. When both parties understand what's happening and we are enabled to get all the data we need, this is when the success is almost inevitable.
Let's look at another vertical. We could look at delivery. We could look at food delivery. What's one that you want to bring up that you feel is sort of applicable from the learnings that other non gaming apps can learn from?
I would highlight one of Delivery Hero's companies in Turkey, Mixipedi. So it's food delivery business, very strong locally, and we were able to also become a material part of their growth strategy. And there was material decrease in CP and also increase in first time orders. With that one, I would say same principles, working transparently on what we're trying to achieve, how much the client wants to invest to make the campaign successful, and really diving into creative strategy to make sure that we create proper intent across users who see the ad and we get the maximum volume with that proper intent.
Building and baking intent into an ad creative. That's, of course, a lot of A B testing, and that's what I can do with you as well. Creating interest is one thing, but this is about sort of making intent actionable.
Right. And there is a balance that is needed there, right? Because creative needs to be exciting enough and interesting so people interact, but it needs to shape the intent that we're trying to capitalize on within the app itself. And I think this is the balance that is a leading factor when it comes to success. There are a number of things that are relevant and important when it comes to creative strategy in general. If there is a character or any personalities in there, it's a good thing. And then like basically providing customization of a character or item or the environment encourages engagement. Story narratives which are dramatic or particularly vivid and interesting when it relates to what the product is. Um, that gives ability to users to be more involved into like what the offering is here. Adding voiceovers with high quality audio track and make sure it has a narrative that that follows the offering and that is descriptive and on point. And if it could be made interactive in a way that's relevant, so there is like a real-time feedback that is created between users and the ad, that's always a good thing. I would say those factors apply to most verticals that we work with and intend to work with.
Well, now that you bring it up, and you also have this ad creative report that you released, ad creative trends, amongst those concepts, that's sort of table stakes for a mobile first company, right? They understand that they were built to do that. They understand how to create performance creatives. Now, you don't just work with mobile first companies. What about the differences with businesses that are not mobile first?
For advertisers who are new to mobile, uh, we usually try to be able to step and do some of that work ourselves because like AppLovin has Spark Labs. This is basically a creative unit that is very experienced in the way they create ads and go about that. So as long as advertiser has any meaningful assets that has to do with the offering and the product, we're very enabled to make sure that we create creatives for them that do a good job. I would think that's the preferred approach.
You are working with companies that haven't looked at metrics in this way, maybe even haven't been thinking about how to grow their presence in this way? There's nuances with UA, with monetization. How do you sort of tune into that?
It is basically how we use creative work to deliver metrics that are meaningful for what we're trying to achieve here, right? And it needs to have a very clear CTA and depict the offering in a way that is in a way that is sufficiently exciting so the user wants to click, but not that exciting so it corrupts what the offering is. And when that balance is there, and it's a very clear message with a very particular CTA. Things start to align.
We talked about what you've been able to achieve with some of your non-gaming clients. We talked about delivery. We also looked at what happened in fintech. Let's try and get some sort of thread here to connect this. If we had to talk about what is needed to find ways to find valuable users, what have you discovered? What are some learnings that you've taken out of working with these companies and helping them to achieve those growth goals?
First off, alignment on expectations and making sure that those are achievable. Oftentimes, everything is achievable if it has proof points in with other partners. So if the company is not entirely new to user acquisition, most of the time their general expectations are relevant, but specificity around it is important in terms of how much budget they're willing to allocate to try a new channel, what they expect return, how we're going to work on creative, how they're going to take our feedback on creative. All those things shape the success. What geos we're going to use as the ones that we're going to pursue in the beginning and when it's expanded. I I think being able to transparently and efficiently communicate and iterate over those things is really key to success.
I remember speaking with a couple of marketers. It was just like things happen sometimes. And you have an example of this. Well, I've seen an example of this based on some of your findings in your ad creative trends report, where you can be very subtle or you can appeal to feelings of nostalgia and go viral. What have you seen?
Yeah, well, I would say that we do try things that are new for sure. When it comes to verticals and advertisers, I think that exactly uh, weren't exactly expected to be an immediate success. I would relate to on top of food delivery, and finance, which is really successful verticals at the moment. We also have a bunch of dating apps that became a big success, and they combine business models. So they combine business models with IAP and ad monetization. So there are definitely new things that we're trying.
And interesting combinations there. I mean, we talk about growth fairly focused at the top of the funnel. There are no shortcuts there, but people are also interested in sustainable growth. And you look at that entire life cycle at AppLovin. As I said, no shortcuts, but what are some of the considerations when you're looking at what you want to achieve in monetization versus, for example, retention? There are adjustments to make, but some can have a big difference. What have you seen work with the apps you're working with when it's more about longer term rather than immediately fishing where the fish are?
It really depends on the business model itself and the funnel, right? It depends on the app, but it could be basically there's like an install, sign up, and first time deposit, right? That's the funnel, and we can start the campaign by optimizing to the sign up as the early event because there are higher volumes, and we see how the value of those users turn up, and going forward, we can change that to like a farther down the funnel event, which is first time deposit. And when we go for that, it's really on the app to deliver retention, but the flow is not really different from like organic user, and if the intent is depicted properly within the creative, it should usually work.
Going to go back to your creative report for a moment because, of course, it's about getting noticed and it's about getting results. And there are some top performing concepts that you've talked about, but what is it that you would maybe tell a newcomer?
Yeah, well, first off, like whatever the category is, I think it's just important to allocate proper time and resources and be willing to take feedback, act on that, or let like the partner do some of the work, because like creative also like it shapes the foundation of the campaign. It shapes what users were getting while the learning is established. It shapes the volume and intent. So it's really a very big part of undertaking. I think like if somebody is starting, it's very important to establish that, because we can have infinite budgets, uh, lose goals, but if creative is not good, it's not going to be a big hit.
You talk about timing and being realistic. I'm just curious. I have to ask you, when is enough enough? Because that's something that marketers also talk a lot about. There's a level of like, yes, I want to stick to this. And then there's another of saying, you know what, I need to change tactic. I maybe need to do something completely different. I have to switch strategy, maybe even pull the plug.
From user acquisition perspective, really it is, how much volume the advertiser can get that hits their goal. At certain point, it is just a function of efficiency and volume, and it needs to be balanced. Proper relationships that we want to see is that we find the compromise between the goals and the volume, and the relationship is long lasting, because we're in the business of creating long-term partnerships, and we want to establish it that way with our advertisers.
Great segue because it's about relationship, as you said, and people will probably want to check out your report. I'll put that in the show notes. Might want to get in touch with you as their destination. I'm a non-gaming app. I've listened to the show. I want to work with you. I want to find out more about this part of AppLovin. Where would I go?
Yeah, we have case study section on our website, and it has a decent amount of non-gaming businesses highlighted, and we increasingly keep them coming. So I think it's a great start to learn about what's currently working.
I have to say, I did exactly the same thing before the before our interview. I went there and looked over some of the case studies. We couldn't get into all of them, but they are some very interesting names, and above all, across all of the verticals. It's booming for non-gaming apps. It's obviously what you're doing and focused on at AppLovin. So maybe have you back again to share some of your case studies and learnings, Andre. It'd be great to do that. But in the meantime, I have to thank you for sharing your time today and for cutting out from MWC. I'm sure it's evening. I'm sure some things are going to go on over there, so I can leave you to it. But it's been great to have you.
Awesome. Thank you so much for having me, and I'll be happy to come back with more to share.
And if you have an amazing story about marketing or what you've achieved or what you enable, then let me help you tell it. You can DM me on LinkedIn or Twitter. In the meantime, knowledge is for sharing. So spread the word, tell your tribe, like the show, subscribe to the channel. All of the above would be amazing. So until then, stay curious, break the playbook, have some fun, keep listening. This is Peggy Anne Salz signing off for The Groove.